One of the fantastic things about living in the state of Florida is there's always something to see, something to do. You can either be in the fairy tale land of Disney or you can just step outside, which is what my two authors tonight have been doing. Doug Alderson, who is an award winning author who has written many, many books, about 15 books, 15 to 16 books about Florida and the great outdoors from the vantage point of a kayak. Then Elaine Lightningbolt knew she wanted to be a writer early on in her life, and family moved to Florida, and Florida has been the backdrop for many of her books and her journey through spirituality. Thank you both for being a part of Authors in Conversation.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Yeah, I'm really happy
This,
to be here. Thank you for having this.
this show is part of a program that is sponsored by the Writers Alliance of Gainesville. These authors will be part of the Sunshine State Book Festival, which is not September. What do I've said September before. January 27th and 28th at Trinity United Methodist Church, and also sponsored by At the Wellness Network. I'm Pamela Marshall, your host. I really appreciate you joining us. Both of you, I talk to authors, and some of them say they started writing after they retired, after their children were on their way. But you all knew that you wanted to be writers early on. Elaine, at 11 years old, what were you writing?
Well, I was just writing like with my friends in middle school, like little short stories and stuff. And I didn't really, I have another career and I was in biomedical research and now I'm an acupuncturist, but I eventually just decided that I wanted to write. It was more a way of like, it just kind of came out. It kind of came out spontaneously, like when I was in my 30s and I was between uh, jobs. I had finished acupuncture school, but I was waiting for my license, so I had some time, and just got. It's funny because I got started because I was noticing how people gossip about other people, and I was like, that's. But then I was like, what if we just gossiped about fake people? It would be so much less harmful. And so my first attempt was I wrote an email about this fictitious person and I sent it to all these people. And I acted like this person just came to Gainesville. His name is Joseph Sandalwood. And he's doing all these things. And he's from the University of Chicago sociology department. He's a graduate student. He wants to study gender relations in this community. And some people believed me. So it started out kind of as a prank, like a playful prank, but I think it kind of loosened me up. I had to kind of loosen up to let it, go, 'cause I did a lot of technical writing in my science career, and just that is not very helpful for creativity really, because it's so, demanding and everything has to be footnoted and referenced. And this was so freeing, but I think that email,
It had to be the truth.
but this was like so freeing. I could make up whatever I want. There was like another universe there,
So
and
yeah.
like, oh, look. So
So
that's how I got started. Yeah, actually.
and Doug, you got paid early on to write. How young were you the first time you were paid?
I was 18 years old, still in high school. I wrote about an environmental program we were doing in high school for an small environmental magazine. Then, right out of high school, I hiked the Appalachian Trail from Maine to Georgia and wrote about that for a college magazine and got paid pretty well for it. So it was kind of surprising. And then I won an award for college writers, $1,000, and soon after
Whoa.
that, and that set me on a journey to Oregon for the summer. Back then $1,000 could go a long way. So 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 I've been doing different adventures ever since.
So what would that $1,000 be the equivalent of today to get paid
That
by?
would be the equivalent of probably 7 or 8 thousand, I would guess, 6 to 8
Oh,
today.
yeah, that'll encourage you to get on the road.
Yes,
Nothing
that's what I did.
like
I still came
going
home
on.
broke, but that's okay. But I had 2.5 months of really great adventures.
And the great outdoors inspiring you to write, and you've won awards with how many of your books?
At least half, I think at least 7 or 8 of the books, I have to add them up, over the years have won awards. Um, so that's always a validation when you win awards. Um, and it does help sell the book sometimes when you can show that it's been vetted by a group and sold. And 10 of my books have been with established publishers, and 5 I've tried to self-publish. So I'm kind of a hybrid author that way. But lately, I've been mostly publishing with Pineapple Press out of West Palm Beach,
Mhm.
and they are part of the Roman Littlefield Publishing Group. And so they've
Well,
been really good with me, and the quality of the books are great. Lots of everything's in color now, so that
oh
really
wow,
helped.
cool,
Yeah.
cool. So Elaine Lightningbolt, what process do you use? Because that's one of the things that a lot of people want to know about. Like, how do you, who's publishing, and whether or not you get any book deals, or you're all self-published?
I'm all self-published. Yeah. Yeah. So I've had 3 books so far, and my partner's helped me self-publish, and he's worked very hard. My partner, June Thomas, has worked very hard to help me with the editing and getting them self-published, and under Palmstone Studio, which is their studio. So yeah, yeah,
Oh, cool, cool.
yeah.
When you are, and look, where did you go to acupuncture school? Because I was going to acupuncture almost
Oh,
every week.
I graduated from Dragon Rises, and I've been in I've been in practice in acupuncture for, God, it's been 20 years now. I switched careers. I was in biomedical research before that. So,
Gotcha.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, I went to Dragon Rises here in Gainesville.
I believe in the power of the needle.
Hmm.
They've worked really well for me.
That's
I've
As a
great.
been
matter of fact,
same here. I've been several times.
you have.
Oh
Well,
yeah.
it's interesting. When I was writing, I would go every week, and they would treat me for opening up channels and for my
Mm.
creativity and to help reduce stress. And like, I don't know what you do, but I feel so much better. And I would many times say, so tell me, can I walk on water today? You all are going to be a part of 150 authors
Mhm.
at the Sunshine State Book Festival with the reception on Friday. You've attended these kinds of events before,
Mhm.
correct?
Correct.
What's significant? Let's talk about the significance of being able to be in this space where the Writers Alliance of Gainesville said bringing writers and readers together. What's special about that for you?
Well, I can answer for me. I love being with other writers for one thing. So you're you're with the other writers. They're mingling at the reception or at your booth. But then you also meet the public and you find out what they like, and maybe they've read some of your books and they give you feedback. And it's just you just it brings out the social part of me, because when you write, it's a very solitary craft. It's hard to write in a crowd um, while you're talking to people. You can't do that, so you have to write. It's a solitary craft, but this part of the writing process is the getting out and meeting people, and so I enjoy that part as well. So I don't like to have one or the other. I like to mix it up.
Yeah, and I think I really agree with that too, having that social element, because writing is a very solitary activity. And I think it's just super exciting to see all the other local authors and exchange books, and get other novels to read. I really like reading fiction, so I'll just get other novels to read that I wouldn't have heard about otherwise. And I really like just socializing with other writers, just having fun. And it's just it's really, it gives me more energy to keep writing. It gives me more
Mhm.
inspiration. Like, I should keep doing this, because it takes some discipline to sit down and write. It takes, you kind of like all these things. Oh no, I shouldn't be. Why am I doing this? I shouldn't be doing that. That's dumb, but then you see that other people are going through that too, and that's normal, and you can overcome that. And yeah, so.
Were you writing? Because I know that for you, Doug, it has taken you on a journey of speaking to groups across the state about Florida. Did
Mhm.
you have any idea that it would open those kinds of doors for you?
Um, it just evolved that way. I wasn't sure, but somebody had told me that eventually you're going to be speaking with a lot of different groups, and I, I had no idea that would happen. But that was about 20 years before I actually started doing that. So I think people sense that I would be doing going from magazines to book publishing and doing more talks, and I do probably 15 to 20 talks a year now. Uh, it's nice
Ooh.
to do it in person again. I was doing everything online for a couple of years, and now it's in person again, which is a lot more fun.
Eileen, what did you think
Um,
writing was going to do for you?
well, it's kind of almost, it's like a cleansing kind of thing because I feel like you go through life and you have all these experiences. And for me personally, I mean, I've had a lot of different experiences living in different countries. I lived in India. I studied in France. I've studied in biomedicine and then gone into acupuncture. And so the two worlds of different types of medicine, I feel like I've had a lot of experiences that span a wide variety of things. But I think it would be just so boring to write my autobiography. It's just so much more fun to find these other characters that exist in these alternate worlds and bring them to life. And I don't really need any props. I don't need any resources. Really, I can just sit down on my laptop and start writing and explore the lives of these characters. And they kind of reveal themselves to me as I'm writing. I'm like, oh my gosh, look what they just did. Look what they just did. And like, but yeah, so and it's really like it's a very healing space too, I think, because it makes me kind of rearrange uh things in a different way and see and kind of create something out of experiences and maybe have some understanding about what those experiences were, but through a fictional expression of them. I hope that does that make sense? Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah.
So Doug, as you are writing about Florida, um, do you have that kind of desire? Are all of your books straight facts?
Oh no, I've written some fiction, and I fiction really lets you go off into imaginary spaces. Historical fiction, you can keep the facts real as far as the events, but then the characters may be fictional, and the dialogue, of course, is fictional. And what I like about when I did this historical novel called Seminole Freedom about enslaved people escaping and joining the Seminoles, the characters came alive for me, and I didn't know where they were going. It took me several years to write the novel, and but I had to let these characters live almost in my mind and on the page. And so that was an amazing process for me to do that. And other writers speak of that. Their characters kind of come alive and they're almost part of them, and they want to help them along on their journey. But nonfiction become very creative as well. So I try to write, if I'm going to write facts, I try to write them in an engaging way and try to integrate that with prose and some descriptions that bring the reader right into the space, the smells, the sights, the sounds of a place, and not just giving them a bunch of facts.
Yeah.
So that's my goal. And sometimes I write right there in a kayak with the page in front of me. I'm writing as I'm floating down a river. And
And a
some people will
gator
say,
going past
it
you.
feels like I'm right there with you. Well, I wrote that while I was actually floating down the river.
For all of you who are watching, I certainly appreciate you watching and your comments and your questions, whether you are watching live or watching this recorded. It's always good to hear from you. Talking to two of the 150 authors that will be a part of the Sunshine State Book Festival here in Gainesville, the 27th and 28th of January 2023. Jolene, thank you for your question. What's the hardest thing about getting ready for a book festival as an author? Either of you?
Yeah. Well, for me, since I have 15 books under my belt, is how many books should I bring? I mean, it's a physical thing almost. how many should I buy? How many should I bring? And which ones might be more popular than others? So it's a bit of a guessing game that way. I don't want to have too much and haul around too many boxes, but I don't want to have too little. So that's part of it. And what kind of display am I going to have?
Oh, I haven't thought about that. You just caused me a little angsting for a moment there. I got to figure that out.
Some people have big pop-up posters and different things. I don't have all that stuff yet, but I do have little stands. The books can go up, and face out. And a lot of my covers are really appealing, I think, because the publisher did a great job taking my photos and put them on the cover. So if I can face them out and people can see them, they'll be drawn to the table, I hope.
Gotcha. Elaine?
Yeah, I think more like the logistics of, okay, like how are we going to do the billing and that kind of stuff. And and I'm not a good, business stuff is not my favorite thing. So that part of like, how am I going to set up the, how am I going to keep track of the sales, or how are people going to pay, or that part. I don't.
That part,
business
yeah,
stuff
that
not
is
really that exciting to me, but yeah. Yeah.
right. Much
Yeah,
like
it used to be I'd
any,
only take cash or check and maybe PayPal, and now most people want to pay by credit card. So I have one of these square
Yeah.
readers, put in your phone, and I am using that now because most people prefer to pay by credit card.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
yeah. So Jolina's books and more. She has another question. What is your best resource for historical research? Where do you do your research?
I'll tackle that. If you walk through my house, you'll see bookshelves everywhere. I try to buy primary source material in book form that is from, let's say it's from the 1800s on up. So I have a lot of first editions of different historical Florida books. It's mostly Florida subjects. So I really, at this point, I don't have to go anywhere to do much research. Then I can look up some research online as well from different sources. And I like to hear source material. Like for the Seminole Freedom book, I was researching a lot of slave narratives taken in the 1930s. So I got a lot of ideas that way to hear it from their voice, kind of directly as they're being interviewed by the WPA and different folks there. So that was very, very handy for that book. But each book develops. I like to quote from different books as well, observations taken at the time directly from a certain author's eyes. Maybe it could be from 1880 or 1910 or whatever, about a place that I'm writing about. So that's always neat.
Yeah. So the historical accounts, Elaine.
Yeah, my book isn't mine. I don't really have a lot of history. I mean, I think I have references to Qigong and yoga practice, which I've learned in school and in India. And it's not history per se. I do get a lot of inspiration. I don't write in a kayak, but I do often, before I write, I'll go out in nature and just kind of look at the thing and like, how would I describe this in words? Especially in here in Florida, I'll go out and then come home and write, or sometimes take notes if I don't have time to write right away and then come home and write. But I don't really, I do have some what I call science fiction in some of my earlier novels, where I kind of took some things from the lab and made up some imaginary protein structure applications that kind of mixed with spirituality. And so I had a lot of fun with that. So that was informed by my science background and amino acids and protein structure. And I do feel like I've lived with the characters over time. The first characters I had were the parents of the main character in the recent novel. But I had to let him grow up. Like there was 10 years between those novels. So I guess he was growing up in my head before I wrote.
Well, interesting. And, both of you talking about having to create dialogue and narratives. Doug, with your book about the slaves and the Seminoles, um, and then Elaine saying that sometimes the characters surprise you. That's fascinating to me. Like, what's going on in your brain when you can come up with all of this? Because the art of forgiveness is based on things that have happened to me, things that have happened to other people, and getting through this spiritual journey of forgiveness. But to say, because you know what? Sometimes I do think of things and I'm like, oh gosh, don't do that. Do you ever do that with any of your characters? Like stop them?
I don't know if I've ever stopped a character.
Okay.
I don't know. I sometimes the characters have some angst and they kind of wonder, should I be doing that? Should I not? They may have the inner dialogue, I guess. How about you, Doug? I don't know.
Yeah, a lot of my characters in the Seminole Freedom novel have a lot of almost PTSD. They have a lot of past trauma from different events in their lives, whether it is slavery or the Atlantic Passage, or for the Native Americans, different battles and so forth. So part of the journey over the years in this novel is how they work through that and how they can carry on a semi-normal life during periods of non-warfare. And so I so it's interesting to do that. Each one of those has a little bit of a hang up for certain areas. And so most of them work through it to a certain level, but not completely. It's hard for them to heal completely because there's too much, but they do work through it to a point to where they can function fairly well.
So how do you move through this? I mean, how does it, as authors and taking on these characters, or these characters taking you on?
A little bit of both.
Huh? A little bit of both?
Because if you know the past of my character, you kind of have to figure out how they might react to certain situations, uh, different than maybe I would react to it with my background. So uh, I don't get faced with life and death situations very often, so they do in my characters in that book. So it's a
I
little
don't
different.
know. I don't know. You're out there with alligators and rattlesnakes. That would be life and death for me.
Yeah, but they're not trying to get me. They're fairly. You leave them alone, they leave you alone, pretty much. That's
Well, that's a good way to look at it, but it just seems like I'm glad it's you and not me.
That's the number one question. I did write a book about alligators, the cultural history of the alligator, America's alligator,
Hmm.
and that's the biggest question I get from the audience is, what about, aren't they aggressive? And well, I have seen hundreds of alligators, maybe over 1,000 in my journeys, and they've never once been attacked by an alligator or had one be very aggressive. Sometimes they want to get in the water and they don't feel secure on land. They dive in the water and they dive under your boat, and there you see the bubbles going down, but they're sinking to the deepest spot in the river. They're not trying to get you, but I've been splashed by alligators jumping into the water. So I try not to get too close to the bank. So you just kind of learn common sense things on how to navigate. With rattlesnakes, like I saw one on Sunday, I just keep an eye out when it warms up to a certain temperature. I know they're going to come out in the sun, and so I look for those spots where they might be. And sure enough, I saw
I
one.
I have an alligator story. I have a little alligator anecdote in part of this new book here, where the two characters, Nathan and his sister, they're over at Chopsticks eating by the lake, and they see some family from New Jersey go out and try to let their kids walk up to this alligator, and they have to try to intervene. Uh, so yeah, I like to think about that. A lot of times people come from out of town and they don't really know how to interact with alligators. A lot of
Mhm.
people are just not even scared, and I think, oh, that thing looks so sluggish, we can just walk right up. No, you have to respect.
Yeah.
So
I've never
But you
thought
have
that.
a much greater chance of being hit by lightning. That's the bigger danger than alligators any day.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Really?
unless you go up and try to feed them and mess with them, which is what
Yeah,
I've seen some
use some
people do.
common
Yeah,
sense, give
yeah,
them
yeah.
a space, some space, whether I'm walking or riding a bike or kayaking, I give them space. And I just leave them alone and don't mess with them. I have a good zoom lens, so I don't have to get right up in their face and take a picture. So it looks like I am, but I'm not. I'm, 30 feet away. I'm not 3 feet away. But
Yeah.
the picture may just show their head.
So, Doug, out of necessity, you combine two skills, writing and being a photographer. Tell us how that came
Correct.
about.
When I was 18, when I started doing magazines and I started doing some articles for Florida Sportsman and different magazines, they wanted a package deal. They wanted the article with photos, some good quality photos. So I saved up my money and bought a good camera. And I didn't know a photographer that could take the photos with me at the time. So I took my own photos and I started loving that craft because I come from a family of oil painters, artists.
Hmm.
So you kind of use the same artistic eye for photos. And my mother often takes my photos and she'll paint them. She's 92 and she still paints oil paintings.
Oh,
So she'll take
nice.
wildlife or scenery shots and use the same eye really to take a good photo as you would as an artist would an oil painter. So it kind of came natural to me, but I did took me a while to perfect the craft and not take a photo in midday versus you start learning certain times of day are better and certain angles are better and working with the sunlight and the shadows and everything. And I was out this morning taking photos. It was fun of different birds mostly.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Elaine Lightningbolt and Doug Alderson are going to be at the Sunshine State Book Festival. I'm really looking forward to being there along with all of these seasoned authors. What advice would you all give to people who are pregnant with books, stories to tell?
Mm. I would say don't be too critical. Just start writing it down first and don't start feeling like, oh, this isn't good enough. Just start getting it out. Let it flow. Put a pen and paper by your bed. I mean, at different people write at different times. Since I used to have day jobs, I used to write at nighttime mostly. So after about 8:30, that's when I'd start writing. Some
Mm.
people like to get up early and write. Um, but sometimes I would sleep and then in the morning I get an idea, so write it down quickly. I never waste anything that I've written. And people say to write what you know. I like to write what I want to learn about, not just what I
Mm.
know, but I want to learn more about certain subjects. So I'll dive into that and make a book out of it.
I
Good
would say,
advice.
yeah, I would say give yourself space. I feel like what was really important to me was to have like a little empty space to let the outside world kind of settle and let this inside inspiration and ideas kind of come up. But I almost had to have quiet, like just empty time. And the last book I started writing during the pandemic when I was when my practice was shut down for a while, and I hope we don't have another time like that again. But I've been trying to think about how do you create that. How can you create that space without that being imposed? But I think that's was what was most important for me was to have that just a little bit of breathing room. Yeah.
Do you all write every day?
I go in spurts. When I'm really into a book project, I write every day. But when I'm in between books, I like to catch up on other things. So I don't beat myself up if I don't write every day.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I don't always have time to write because my main job is the acupuncture practice, so I don't always have time to write. But I write when I can, and when I think of something, I get inspired. I try to at least to write a few sentences so I can come back to it later. Yeah.
And are there more books that you feel like you have a lot more to write, a lot more to say, or you have no idea? It just comes to you and you just have to do it. What are your thoughts on it? You've written these books. How many more do you think you have? How many
I
more
Well,
do
have
you want to?
yeah, go ahead.
I have one more. I try to take it one at a time. I've got one that I'm kind of thinking about. It's going to be about kind of like a sequel to this book about their older sister. Like she's been in Morocco for a while, and they've been exploring Sephardic Judaism in Morocco. And she went on a Fulbright. She's on a Fulbright right now. See, in my mind, she is. So, and
It's okay.
so
That's where it
she'll come
is.
back. She'll come back here to Florida, and we'll see what happens.
I usually have 3 or 4 different ideas, and I've done several lately with Pineapple Press, and so I think they want to. I have a book coming out in March on Florida's coast, a lot of photos as well with it, and I think they want to step back and take a look at all the books I've written with them and figure out what direction, because I've thrown out 2 or 3 different ideas, and so they want to take a step back and maybe then figure out what avenue to go with. So I don't really have a project at the moment, so I'm just writing whatever I feel like, what comes to mind, which is also fun to do.
Doug, you need to write a historic story / fiction about families in those houses that washed away on the coast.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, in fact, I visited Sanibel Island last December. That's part of my book, and that really got hit by Hurricane Ian. That's really devastating.
Really sad.
Yeah.
Well,
on the East Coast as well, they had problems.
Yeah, as I watched that, it was like, oh my goodness, it just seemed unreal. Elaine, you could write about that. You could just grab a hold of that and just suck that all up and come up with whatever you want to.
The characters can just wander over there and find out what happened after the storm, and they can just yeah, it's true.
There you go.
Yeah.
There's got to be some fascinating stories about over there. What about somebody that went missing but really wasn't missing? They decided to take this time to disappear.
Oh, yeah.
That'd be good. Yeah, that'd be exciting. This time to start a new life somewhere and just go to another state or another country.
Another country. They need to go to another country.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. And then they might come back at some point. Everyone thought they were dead or something.
Right. Well, you like for people to come back, don't you? You always want to bring them back. Can they just stay?
Right? Yeah.
Well, it has been very fascinating chatting with you all. Thank you for joining us for Authors in Conversation. I look forward to seeing you all in January at the Sunshine State Book Festival.
Yeah.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
Come on to the festival.
Yep. Yes. I thank all of you for watching, whether you're watching on YouTube. If you are, please like and subscribe on Facebook, like and share. And on LinkedIn, please make comments on all of them and share your thoughts and your post. I do appreciate it so very much. I'm Pamela Marshall at the Wellness Radio TV and at the Wellness Radio TV podcast. Remember, there is healing at the well. Make it a fantastic moment. We'll see you next time.